Now I am presenting the sound of the microphone recording with a Portacapture X6 and a Portacapture X8. I've done 6 recordings and I have chosen high gain in the beginning and low gain later on. And if you record with 32-bit floating, that means even if you record with a level which is too high, you can then later on change the volume. So let's say I go down with 15 dB, and you can see obviously the whole dynamics of the original recording is still there, because the dynamic range of a 32-bit recording is that high. While as before, when I recorded not with 32 bits, this means when I have distortion and I try to go down with the volume, I can see it's limited, so the distortion which is there will still be there. So that's the difference between the 32-bit recording and a recording with 24 or 16-bit. Let's listen to a bit of the sound of the microphones. I placed them beside each other. So I'm playing a recording which is not distorted, but you can hear the wind influence. So that's the X6 and now the X8. So to me, the microphones of the Portacapture X8 and X6 sound quite similar. There is hardly any noise floor noticeable. They sound quite high resolution and yeah, quite similar for my ears, at least for this first comparison. Within the Portacapture X6, you can access the launcher via the new menu button below here. And then you see all the apps for different occasions. And if you want to use the Portacapture X6 as an audio interface, surprisingly, you need to open the manual app. And what comes out of this output here, external out, is the result of a mix of an app. So if you want to hear what comes from your computer, you need to route your computer output into the Tascam. And that works by accessing the inputs. Well, not here necessarily. You can choose mic and 3.4 here, but you got to go back to the menu. And then you have the input select. And for the input select, you can choose USB. If you choose USB, that means the audio is streamed from your DAW into the Tascam, and then you can monitor what comes out of the external out, which is of course not 100% perfect, because you need to use 2 tracks of that manual app. So if you want to record 4 tracks simultaneously, for example, from the built-in microphones and the input, then you cannot at the same time listen to what comes from your DAW, which is a disadvantage. If you use the Portacapture X8, you have 2 tracks more, so you may not that easily run out of tracks. If you use the podcast app, losing 2 tracks in comparison to the X6 is also a little disadvantage, because for that podcast app, you only have the 2 tracks here, so you can do a podcast with 2 voices and also use the pads. I haven't inserted a card, but of course, if you want also to listen to your sound coming from a DAW, then you don't have another track at your disposal, which is differently on the Portacapture X6, where you have 2 tracks more. You have separate inputs on the right side, and then also the podcast app, or also the mixer app, manual app, has more tracks. You can see this here. There's the podcast app and it has more tracks. One other thing everyone should know when working with the Tascam Portacaptures is that when you use the effects, they usually are there to be recorded with your recording. So for example, if you want to record music, then you have the option to choose a preset, for example, to record piano or vocal, and that includes several settings which you can also adjust here. For example, here you have low cut, and you can choose different settings for this. And then you have noise gate, limiter, EQ, and within the EQ you can also access settings manually. If you choose the preset manual, then you have a 4-band EQ with 2 shelving and 2 fully parametric bell EQs. If you access the reverb, then this reverb is recorded directly into your recording. Also, if you go to the general settings and go to the I/O settings, and within the I/O settings you choose a reverb, that's the same reverb which you have here, which means this reverb is also recorded. Also, if you access a different app which is called manual, and in the manual app you have a mix down option. When you go into the menu, mix down option, which means all the tracks you recorded get rendered into one new file. Then there is no reverb or effect processed additionally to what has already been recorded. The mix down is reflecting the volume and pan settings which you have in the mixer of the manual app. That's determining what comes out of as a result when you render a mix down file, but you don't render additional effects into it. In this sound report, I am checking the audio quality of a recording of the Tascam Portacapture X6. It's external input coming from my phones out from my MacBook Air. I'm aware that this phones out is leading to a loss of treble, and I've done this before with other devices, especially Sonic Ware Sample Track and the Arturia Mini Fuse. And what I'm doing is I am comparing the recording with a match EQ. I have the reference file analyzed here, and I have the Tascam recording analyzed here, and this is the result. So there is a loss of treble with the Tascam, which is higher than the loss of treble with the other devices. I've tried the recording 3 times. I also tried to change the volume setting of my output, so maybe there's a loss through distortion, but that didn't make a big difference. These are my curves from the 3 tries. Maybe one time I did something wrong. And if I compare this to what I had with the mini fuse, then I had the mini fuse significantly less loss of treble with the same configuration, with the audio coming out from the MacBook, while if the audio came out from the mini fuse directly, I had a linear curve. And when trying this with a sample track, I had this curve, so I had also some loss of treble and some change down here. But with Tascam, I can see, while as some of what's going on here may relate to a specific recording situation, this is quite obvious that there's a change in frequency response above, let's say, 18 kilohertz when recording with the Tascam. So this curve means that I have to add treble in order to get the original sound. So the recording has lost this amount of treble.